Of course, the government has called this capacity assessment and rationalization program, and other words have been used, including redeployment and restructuring. Numerous words there. What exactly is the government doing?
Just like it's titled, Hussein, it is a capacity assessment and rationalization program. What it entails is that we intend to make the public service efficient and effective. And so what we're doing, we're assessing our own capacities, finding out the skills that we have, and then realigning those skills to the organizational structures that we have right now in this new current dispensation to ensure that we are delivering the service delivery that is expected of the government.
And like you said, the most important thing here is efficiency.
Yes.
I'll come back to that in a short while. So many questions already from you on 22422. And on Twitter, I'll read some of them on 22422. Somebody saying, why is the government sending its workers home? And yet it had promised Kenyans job after getting power. That is Murage SK Kiaragana. And then somebody else here says, again, I'm one of the young civil servants. There are rumors that retrenchment is targeting those who have worked less than 10 years. Is it true? Madam Waziri, there's anxiety, and many are already talking about retrenchment. So I'll just ask you like that. Is this not retrenchment? Or
No.
is there going to be retrenchment?
No, this is not a retrenchment exercise. This is a realignment and rationalization exercise. It is intended to realign the skills that we have to the new mandate of the government in the Constitution. So at this point in time, there is no conversation whatsoever on retrenchment.
Okay, if we are realigning then, what informs the need to realign?
You know very well that we passed a new constitution, and therefore we got into the devolved structure of government. So we have some functions that were originally carried out by the national government that have since moved to the county government. And so we transferred some staff and skills to the county governments, but we have discovered that we don't have a very good balance. So you can have, like in certain counties, a certain number of people, and in other counties, fewer than the staff that you actually would require. Similarly, in the national government, you may find that in some departments you have more people than you require, whereas some departments don't have anybody at all, especially the new ministries. So this is a capacity assessment and realignment primarily.
Okay. Cabinet Secretary Waiguru is our guest on The Big Question. Send us your comments on 22422. And on Twitter using the hashtag TheBigQuestionKE. We'll keep sampling them. And a lot more questions going to the Cabinet Secretary in a short while. Plus your questions, of course, you can send them. We'll be back after this short break. Welcome back to The Big Question. Our guest tonight is Devolution and Planning Cabinet Secretary Waiguru. We're still getting your comments on 22422 and on Twitter. I'll look at some again here. There's so many unproductive workers in the civil service and other sectors, but they are untouchable because they have connections with big people in the country. How is the Cabinet Secretary going to handle this? Only hardworking, innocent, defenseless workers will likely suffer the cut. And David Gurenganga from Langata. Waiguru, well done. Civil service full of incompetent employees who most likely were not hired legally. Streamline and ensure fairness in the exercise. And Nana from Nairobi. Realignment, reorganization, retrenchment, or whatever the Honorable Cabinet Secretary wants to call this exercise. The fact remains that they will send people in the public sector home at the end of the day. Sugarcoating the process does not change the intended objective. I want you to respond to the last one.
Again, Hussein, as I said, we are doing a capacity assessment. We intend to realign our skills to the needs of the public service right now. That's what we're doing. That's where we're starting. This process was initiated as a result of a conversation between the Council of Governors and the head of state during a summit, the first summit last year. And during that time, if you remember, we hadn't even transferred or functions at all to the county governments. And so there was concern that the counties were already starting to recruit at that time, whereas we had quite a number of people in the national government. So that's when the decision was made. So we're implementing that decision now. And as we stand, there has been no conversation whatsoever on retrenchment because we haven't gotten there yet.
Are we ever going to get there?
I can't tell. It would be premature to say. We are waiting for the results of the exercise, and Based on that result, we will know which direction to take. Don't forget that there have been quite a number of things that have been happening. One of them is the issue of ghost workers, for example, which we're still working on, and is significant. So depending on how many people you find that actually don't really exist and have been drawing on the public wage bill, and then realigning what we have with the county governments, then any other conversations can come. But anything on retrenchment right now would be premature.
But it may come. There is a possibility that it may come in the end?
Well, let me say that it's preemptive. I wouldn't want to say that it may come, because that is really not the intention. The intention right now is realignment of what we have, the skills that we have, to the public service that is expected by the Kenyan people.
Okay, let me go delve a little bit. I'll come to the issues of ghost workers a bit later. Let me delve into that. When you say realignment, what exactly do you mean? Okay. Moving people, transferring people from one ministry to another and to county governments, and then what?
Yes, that one is definitely going to happen, because what is happening right now is that we have requested county governments, for example, to restrain themselves when it comes to recruitment until we have established what are the skills that we have and the excess capacities that we may have at the national level, and then also established what they need at the county levels, seeing what different counties have, and see if we can realign that. So movement will be inevitable, yes.
Right. And then when you talk about capacity assessment,
yes,
what does that mean? Are you talking about competence?
Yes, that's one of the things. I will give you an example. We have now recently changed the way we deliver services to the Kenyan people. We are establishing Huduma centers. In the new Huduma centers, you have a one-stop shop service center where you have all the ministries delivering services under one roof. Now that requires a realignment to the way we do our business, because people are actually having to be moved, especially the ones who deal with the public, from their traditional offices to an open plan center where all government services are concentrated. Now, for you to be able to deliver services at the Huduma centers, you will need to be retrained, and we've been doing that. We've been picking a lot of the excess capacities that we have in our ministries, excess clerks, and training them to provide customer service, for example, and be the people who actually manage some of the counters. So yes, there will be realignment.
Right. Madam Waziri, you're talking about capacity, and I asked you about competence. You said it includes that. Yeah. You on record talking about competence and saying we have civil service, and we know that we have been unproductive recently.
Yes.
Do you believe there are civil servants who are incompetent currently as you speak?
Well, let me put it this way. There is no organization that will not have a certain percentage of people who are not as productive as they should be. The statistics on productivity are not our statistics. They're statistics that are actually national statistics. Yes, we have done our studies, and the studies show that the public service actually is not as productive as it should be. As a matter of fact, it shows that in the last 10 years, whereas the wage bill has grown by about 100%, you have productivity that has grown by about only 30%. And then similarly, when you look at the productivity index, what those statistics tell us is that for every 1 shilling that you pay for service or for a worker, you get out of that worker 60 cents. Now, these are studies that have been done by the Ministry of Labor, and the statistics are actually there. So we cannot say that those are not the facts, because they are not my facts. Yeah. They're the facts that are provided by the ministry responsible.
Okay, so at the end of the day, when this is done and somebody is found to be incompetent, how is that going to be handled?
There are very many options. There is, again, realigning them to what they're really supposed to be doing. Maybe they're not doing what they are actually required to be doing. Maybe they're in the wrong assignment, for example. Maybe they're better placed at another place. So what you do is you put them in the right place, or retrain them, build capacity, transfer. The public service is big. So before you get to any other conversation about whether you're letting people go, it's mostly about realigning people to their skills, to the work that they actually should be doing.
Although currently, as we speak, I believe these people are working at departments or areas where they were employed to work. So if somebody, and that is the question some people are asking, if somebody is incompetent, why can't the government just be bold enough and let them go?
Well, let me put it this way. You cannot say that someone is employed in a department. In the public service, you're not employed really in a department as such. You're employed in the public service. And so when you are employed in the public service, you are redesignated according to needs. So you can have individuals who have been moved, especially the ones who are not necessarily in the professional cadre. They can be moved around to places where they're not as productive as they could be. So it doesn't necessarily mean that because they're not as productive because they're incompetent. It's actually maybe they're wrongly placed. So that is an option. Why wouldn't the government, because that's not really the ultimate solution. What we need to do is enhance the capacities that we have, realign them like every other person does, including in the private sector, ensure that by the time you are making any decision that will be detrimental to any individual, you have exhausted all other options. So we are not going in that direction of releasing anybody. What we are doing right now is realigning skills to the capacities that are required.
But we won't get a confirmation from you whether people will be laid off or not at the end of the exercise. At the end, when the study is finished and the rationalization exercise is done in 6 months, we should be able to know what the recommendations are. And it's an independent assessment, so it has nothing to do with me. It will be preemptive for me to say what it is they will recommend. So you can go either way?
I cannot tell.
You cannot tell?
Yes.
Okay, who's doing it then?
There is an established framework that has been put in place. It has all the relevant institutions that are mandated with managing human resource within the public service. We have an intergovernmental committee. This comprises of first the Council of Governors Representative and the national government. And that's now our ministry, and then the Council of Governors Committee that is responsible for human resource. And then we have the Public Service Commission, the SRC, which is responsible for salaries. We have the Transition Authority that is responsible for transition period. And then we have the Commission of Implementation of the Constitution because of oversight. We have the National Treasury. Right. We have the Attorney General as well. So we have all the institutions that are required to be consulted as part of the institutional framework. So
we'll have representatives from all these organizations you talked about and have them form a committee or form a team, or?
What we have is that we have a steering committee, which has now the commissioners, the ministers responsible, and then we have also the Council of Governors. Then below them, there is a technical committee. Now, the technical committee is the one that does the day-to-day work, supported by a secretariat. They have gotten external consultants. There are 2 consulting firms supporting that committee, the technical committee. We have one that is doing the human resource audit, and then we have another one that is doing the capacity assessment and rationalization exercise. So they will combine their studies, and it will be coordinated by the technical committee. There will be quite a number of activities that are going on, and then they will give us our final assessment report.
Right. From how you talk, you're saying it will be independent?
Yes.
But not independent from the public service?
Yeah, well, the committee itself is independent. In fact, in terms of the instructions, you cannot tell it in which direction it will go, and that's why you have everybody represented there.
But
so it's not
the people who are there are representing
institutions
in the public service, isn't
yes.
it? Should it have been better then to have this done by not anyone from the public service?
Well, that's what I'm saying, because there is 2 consulting firms, and these consulting firms are independent of the public service. But there are certain things that have to be done by committees of the public service because of coordination. For example, they have to move from one ministry to another. They have to work with civil servants to understand and assess what it is that they do, and that's what the technical committee is going to be facilitating. But the actual study and assessment is done by external consultants.
Okay. Yeah. The issue of ghost workers. An audit of 8 government ministries revealed earlier this year 1.8 billion is lost annually to ghost workers. Something was supposed to be done about that. What has been done so far?
That's one of the audits that has been outsourced because we were doing it internally, but we thought it would be good to be done independently. So one of those consulting firms is actually just doing that, checking on the issue of the ghost workers. So they'll give us an independent report that has got absolutely nothing to do with the ministry.
And that is now?
It's ongoing. Now. It's already ongoing.
Like, when did it start? Because the question is, why hasn't this been done? Why wasn't this done earlier, the issue of ghost workers?
Before this financial year,
right.
Or before?
When this was, when this was discovered, it was discovered as early as last year. People were talking about the issue of ghost workers. Why hasn't anything been done about the ghost workers up to now?
We actually officially announced it this year. when we found the issue of the ghost workers. And what we did is that you have to go through a procurement process to get an external firm. So you just don't wake up and pick an individual. So we were doing our internal to check, but as we went, you need those results validated by an external institution, and you also would want an independent institution to actually come out with recommendations. So what we've done is we've completely separated ourselves from it. But ours was to find. What we did is that we found that there was a problem. We confirmed there was a problem.
Right.
And then we outsourced the assignment to an independent audit firm.
Yeah, and the question is the pace, because if it's just 8 government ministries, so you're talking about 1.8 billion annually, what that means is up to now, that is happening, isn't it? And it could even be worse. And that is still going on up to now.
Yeah, but you see, Hussein, you need to understand how government works. You can't just wake up and start saying that this is a ghost worker and this is not, because you might find that there will be questions that will be raised in terms of the validity of your information, for example. And so you need to outsource it to an independent audit firm with certain expertise to confirm those numbers. Now, when we've done that, you cannot wake up and pick a firm without going through the procurement process. So you have to go through the procurement process. We found out this in the middle of the financial year. So you also need a budget to do that. So to get a budget allocation, you either wait for the revised budgets or you wait for the beginning of the financial year. But as I said, this process has started. There is an independent firm taking on this exercise. They should be able to complete it at the same time that the other assessment is being completed, the one on rationalization, will combine them.
November.
Now, if you find that, for example, Hussein or anybody else has been taking 2 salaries, then there will be surcharge if they continue to be taking the 2 salaries for as long as they've been taking those 2 salaries. So it doesn't really matter whether you find them today or tomorrow. I mean, there will be a process of recovery of those resources.
This will happen when? When are we expecting the results? In November?
The results about November, December, yes.
November, December.
Yes.
So we should know and who the ghost workers are by that time.
Yes.
Right. That is an undertaking we're getting from you. Would you say the civil service is bloated as it is?
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that the civil service is bloated. What I would say is that we have certain concerns with regard to our wage bill. Whether you have a bloated civil service, that's another question. Because the issue of being bloated is not necessarily commensurate with the issue of the wage bill. What I think at this point in time, looking at how the county governments have been establishing the requirements of the devolved structure of government, is that what we need at this point in time is to realign the capacities that we have to the needs that are there with regard to service delivery.
Okay, now that you're talking about the wage bill, does this have anything to do with that? What is happening now? You're talking about realignment. Does this have anything to do with that? Are you hoping in the end to reduce the wage bill? No. The
wage bill can be reduced in 2 ways. You can either grow the economy, meaning you don't go increasing the number of people that you're hiring in the public service. So one way to stop the wage bill from growing is to ensure you realign your capacity so that people are not recruiting unnecessarily, like we have said with the county governments. We've requested them to stop recruiting, and if they need any resource, human resource, to ask the national government, because we at this point in time can't provide that capacity. And that's what we mean. Instead of just recruiting and continuing to recruit, what we're doing is stopping the recruitment and then using the capacities that we have. And at the same time, we expect the economy to grow, so you expect the percentage of the wage bill to go down anyway.
And there is, now you're talking about county governments and recruiting, that is some of the concerns we're getting. Why shouldn't this have been done after we know everything has been transferred to come from the national to county governments? What needs to be transferred? And I'll get a question here as regards to that. Mahiangu from Nairobi says, Madam, how do you intend to justify your action while counties are employing new staff every day instead of deploying existing qualified staff? Somebody else says, the counties have independent service boards which hire staff for county governments with constitutional powers to create and abolish offices. Which legal framework will you use to interfere with staffing in the county governments? Does your docket cover civil servants and county governments?
Well, again, I'll go back to the original response that I gave. This assignment is a joint assignment. It's an assignment between the national and the county government. So it's not the Ministry of Devolution that is imposing its issues on the county governments. As I said, the Council of Governors is part of this process. This was as a decision of the summit where the national government is represented by the head of state and the Council of Governments agreed to do a joint capacity assessment and rationalization program. So it's not an issue of the ministry.
It's
it
joint.
Is a joint,
it's an all-inclusive
intergovernmental initiative.
Right.
Yes.
So this is hypothetical. But if tomorrow the governors or some governors decide no, it distorts everything, doesn't it?
I don't think they can just wake up and say no, because they have signed, you saw even the press statement is countersigned by them. There's a way government works. I don't think they would just wake up for no reason and say no. Even now, when we were transferring functions, there was an agreement, a joint agreement that was signed that they will use the capacities that are existing within the civil service unless those capacities do not exist. So as much as possible, they have been actually requesting for those human resource capacity from the national government.
Right.
And as we speak, we've already transferred over 66,000 of our staff to the county government. So it's not an issue of them waking up and saying no, because it's a decision that they made themselves at the council.
Right.
As a council.
Right. As we wind up, I'm looking at some of the concerns here, one including what the SRC gave a report recently, saying, and I quote them, an individual in the lowest job group, that is A, earns 1%, that is 7,000 shillings, of the basic salary of the highest earner, that is 737,000 shillings, in the service that is in job group V. So my question is this exercise supposed to tackle such things?
Well, we'll wait for the recommendations, but ideally we should narrow the gap and the discrepancies that we have in terms of the wage bill.
So it's one of the things that's
it's one of the things that we expect should be a recommendation at the end of the day. And the SRC would be the best institution to actually address that, because they're the ones who set salaries. So I wouldn't say at this point in time whether you'll increase or not, but I know that there has been a concern about that disparity, and it's one of the issues that we're actually looking into.
The issue of composition or ethnic composition in public service commission themselves said 49% is covered by free tribes. Of course, we cannot say everyone who got the jobs got them because of A, B, C, D. Some are competent and got them on merit. But is this going to cover that, the composition of,
I guess the analysis will cover everything. I think the analysis will cover everything, and I think there's already a deliberate effort to ensure that we are balancing regionally, even with our own institutions, in terms of recruitment. I think there is a deliberate affirmative action towards the marginalized groups, for example, who've completely been left out in the past. So I think the recommendations should be able to cover that as well.
Should be, or is it part of what is going to be covered?
It is part.
They will.
Yes, they will.
Okay, right. Pay cuts that were to be taken by cabinet secretaries, the president, the deputy president, and principal secretaries, parastatal heads. Are they being done? Is that happening?
It should be done, because I know my salary has been cut.
It should be done, but
it should have been. I mean, because I know cabinet secretaries have already had their cuts effected, so it should have been already effected for the rest as well. Right.
Haji from Garissa here. A question to you, which is a bit more talking about your tenure. There were attempts to have you impeached. That was obviously going to come. Did you fear that you might lose your job at the time?
That's a difficult question. That's a difficult question. I wouldn't say fear as such, but it was a difficult time.
It was a difficult time?
Yes.
Like, what was going through your head when all this was happening?
Well, just how hard public service is, I think. Yeah.
Would you say that was your lowest moment at the time?
In the public service, yes.
That was your lowest moment? Right. And there were allegations, I'll just say allegations for now, that you dismissed somebody through an SMS, precisely just for good. You've never talked about this.
No.
So did that happen, or what was that? What was that?
There was no SMS that I sent to him. He was not dismissed. He was transferred.
Procedurally?
Yes.
Right. Finally, again, I'll go back to this because there are a lot of fears. Come April next year, after November, you've got the recommendations.
Yes.
Are you saying no civil servant will be laid off?
As much as possible, I hope there is not going to be a civil servant that's going to be laid off. Let me put it that way. There are other options already, as you know. There are other options. Let me put it that way. Just the movement of staff and the cleaning up of the payroll, removing the ghost workers, could be one of the solutions that actually the government has been looking forward to. So I cannot say at this time whether anyone will be laid off or not.
Okay.
You're very insistent on that.
Yeah, no, I just need to find out because there are a lot of concerns.
Yeah.
But thank you very much, Madam Cabinet Secretary Anne Waiguru, the Cabinet Secretary of Devolution and Planning. Thank you so much for making time for the big question tonight. Keep sending your comments on 22422 and on Twitter using the hashtag #TheBigQuestionKE. We'll sample them as we wind up with Janet Stay tuned.